In fact, we have just at this moment run out of time. It was our intention, and perhaps we will try and do this for a few minutes, to turn to everybody here to do in much shorter length. Wasn't an implied criticism, Emilios.
But there was only 20 minutes. Just my allotted time.
To sum up what we've done and where we've arrived at, what we would like to do from this conference, apart from making available the proceedings, I'll come to you in just one moment, is produce an executive summary of what we've achieved and circulate it to everybody who has been here, along with the other records that we've made, including the downloadable podcast. And we also want to know if you have any suggestions for action points from this meeting for the future. Now, I can see George has already got answers to all of these questions.
I'd like to just say a few words. I might. Can I have my microphone? My point has been, first, that what makes the system work is the authority of courts in order to do things which people do voluntarily without protesting. I think one of the greatest incidents of that which impressed me was in the Bush against Gore or Gore against Bush litigation. I voted for Al Gore. But the fact that the Supreme Court of the United States, in a somewhat inept decision, decided the case and nobody was burning tires in the street, they weren't overturning tires, is a tremendous statement as the authority of important institutions, which here, with what's going on in the current crisis, to me seems somewhat lacking in Europe. Secondly, my point is that there are some decisions, like decisions whether or not it's more important to keep a factory open than it is to protect the environment or some general practice one way or another, which requires huge cost-benefit analysis, judgment of political context and what have you. I don't think those are truly judicial questions, although I understand that judges make the law. Last point, and this is where I'm starting from my own work, a world in which the European Court of Human Rights can say that if what you see in public cannot be disclosed if someone protests, it invades his privacy because it does not concern a debate of general interest, which they did say in the von Hanover case, or the British courts in Campbell's case, that if you learn something that people would rather you didn't disclose, even though you saw it in public. But if you can prove that it has artistic value or this value or that value, I don't think courts should make any decisions as to what is a debate of public interest or what is artistic merit or that. That's not what you can't make a world in which you have to justify your speech. I mean, we're here in Greece where people like to talk and make noise. And you want to tell people that you can't talk because someone else would rather you didn't talk. Well, that's too bad. That's my only point. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your courtesy in listening to me.
Thank you. If everybody could keep their comments relatively brief, because we've had a very long day, and I know that I'm not the only person who's getting not tired of the conversation, but lacking the physical ability to stay with it. Sir.
Now that everything has been said and done in this magnificent setting, I think leaving this amphitheater, it's important to understand that we have an ethical duty not to moralize about these subjects. I think the last thing we need is some kind of self-appointed elite that patronizes people. I think that if we go out there and try to outcompete with the sentiments that are being stoked by a very powerful alliance of vested interests, we're going to lose out. We are lucky enough to be in the company of great scientists. We need to shine the light of reason upon the twin crises facing our species, the global financial economic crisis and the global ecological catastrophe which is looming. We have to understand that it's not either one or the other. The two are part of the same threat to humanity. They are both the result of asymmetrical exercise of power, extractive power, over people, over land, over resources. And that if in effect what we are saying, I agree entirely that we will need to be modest in the way that we are articulating our proposals. These are not revolutionary times. We're not going to change the world. We should never get indulged in the discussion about whether we should have capitalism or socialism or whatever. What we need now is a series of modest, common sense proposals, which, for instance, say one, and I'll finish here, about the debt crisis, about the economic crisis. In 2008, the financial world changed. Since then, we are refusing to come rationally to terms with the fact that all we're doing is we're kicking the ball around from the private sector to the public sector, back to the banks, and so on and so forth. Similarly with the environment, similarly with all the problems facing humanity, we need a rational bargain. We need to have all interests represented around the table, both at the regional level, at the EU level, and also globally, and say, guys, you cannot ask us Greeks to borrow at 5% from the European Union in order to pay banks at 10% who are borrowing at 0%, when it is quite clear that nobody has any confidence left in this system. Similarly, a similar story can be said about the environment. What we need is to discuss rationally ways of tackling the causes and not the effects of these twin towers.
Thank you. Peter.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make 2 points. Can I have my slide, please? The first is to repeat what I said earlier, that I still think is the elephant in the room, which people don't recognize. The primary problem is there are too many humans, and without controlling population at a sustainable level, all other activities will actually only slow things down very slightly. The second thing, sorry, can I have the slide, please? Which I'd like to make, which I've learned at this meeting, and the point I would like to make to you relates to the solutions, a number of which have been made, and to point out to you that almost all activities are subject to R.K. Merton's famous American sociologist law of unintended consequences, which is most beautifully illustrated in this cartoon. I hope the Greeks also know the fairy story of the princess who kissed a frog, and he turned into a prince, and here is the result. He fell into a pond and drowned, and she says it seems such a pity because as a frog he was a really terrific swimmer. And everybody who suggests solutions must bear in mind the law of unintended consequences, and solutions need trialing and they need outcome measures. The fact that they sound good at the time is not enough. Much.
Thank you, Peter. That is almost the note on which we should end, I imagine. Are there other points that people wish to make? May I? Nicholas.
It occurs to me that the people in this room have titles and come from institutions which have, rightfully or wrongfully, earned some respect in the press and by the establishment. What if three of us, on any one of the things we've talked about, were to get together and write an op-ed piece for the Times, for the Financial Times, for The Economist, for the Washington Post, and we did it systematically. I mean, we have different expertise, we have different focus, World Court, whatever it is. But what if we began a systematic inundation of the presses and send them to more than one? I know you're not supposed to send an op-ed to more than one institution. Send it to 5, send it to 7, and do this over a period of, let's say, a month. So that ideas that were out there, because these pieces, when you're lucky enough to get them chosen, actually do have tremendous impact. People read that half page in the Financial Times. You could have very good leveraged effect by doing that. Now, somebody has to orchestrate the topics and where it goes. But I'm suggesting, now, if this sounds like the Chamber of Commerce of the United States in terms of what they do, that's exactly what they do. Are we going to be any less effective because we happen not to be united by greed?
That's right.